Bonjour Aimee Bender. Dans tous vos romans, dont Un papillon, un scarabée, une rose aux éditions de l'Olivier, l'enfance est très présente. En quoi la vôtre vous a façonné comme écrivain?
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here, even virtually. And I mean, I'm so interested in childhood, and I think I'm interested in it as a writer because my experience of childhood was it was not a verbal time. Although I did like writing, it was not a time that things, insights, and understandings of the world were available to me in words. And so it feels like this compelling challenge for me to think about what a child is absorbing, which is so much, and not really processing, but just feeling and experiencing, and how to try to write about that through language in a way that feels true to the experience of the child, but also the distance of adulthood, where you do have language and it becomes something that is holdable through words in a way that is different. That, to me, being one of the major differences between childhood and adulthood, is that shift in perception and capacity to kind of process. So I think because of that, I'm so interested in how children look at the world and how children feel and experience what they feel and know through their feelings.
Vous êtes né à Los Angeles, en Californie, où vous vivez toujours. C'est le symbole du rêve américain, mais est-ce aussi le symbole de l'imaginaire américain?
Yes, in a way, it's very much, but I think of it. Part of the experience of living in LA and growing up here, I feel like there is a real difference from people who come to LA. I'm sure this is true for cities like Paris as well, right? People that move to a mythical city and people that grew up in one, because you don't have it in your mind as a kind of beacon, a place to go to. Like, it was just the place that I knew, but I would watch movies and TV like everyone else and see my own city. I even saw my high school shown to me in this kind of gilded light, but it was very different than the daily life I was living. And so there is a magic, I think, to major metropolises in that way, and that they feel mythical and regular. And I feel like that's part of being here. And maybe one of the things I like to write about LA, or in this book, it's set in Burbank, which is a very ordinary part of the city. There's the valley and then there's the city, and the valley feels sort of like a lesser, it's like the outskirts, right? You just don't feel like you have the special urban experience of LA proper. But of course, it's interesting in its own right and has its own merits, and plenty of people have a lovely time living there, and also it's more affordable and all that. But so I wanted to have that be part of this particular book, and to show LA that's not movie LA and it's not TV LA, but is regular people LA.
Votre héroïne Francie a 8 ans quand elle réalise que sa mère dépressive ne peut plus s'occuper d'elle. Pourquoi l'imagination devient-elle vitale pour échapper à sa réalité?
It's a great question, and I think it's a complex question, but I think part of what drew me to this book, and sort of the blurry lines in it, was to have a character like Francie's mother, who does deal with psychotic episodes where her sense of reality and fantasy get genuinely blurred and she's not aware. She thinks there's a spider in her hand and she smashes her hand. She can't reason her way through that one. Her mind can't do that. But to also have an imaginative character like Francie, who is thinking things and is frightened of her own thoughts a little bit, but also is sort of open and is dealing with the world in that way, and also has experienced some uncanny happenings in the world that are of imagination and beyond imagination, in the way that things can happen that we don't understand and we can't explain. And where does she situate those experiences when we have this kind of realm of fantasy and reality shifting and changing within different characters? So I do think her imagination and her capacity to think about this time and to kind of be open and present to the strangenesses of the world means she kind of lives in a little bit of a different realm than a character who was not raised by a mother who had psychotic episodes. That this has shifted something in Francie's perception. She herself is not psychotic, but she has a lot of or does not have any experiences of psychosis, but she has some moments in the world that she can't explain. And what does she do with those? So that's part of the central questionings, I suppose.
Vous écrivez qu'en tant qu'enfant, elle était immergée dans un monde d'émotions sans nom. Pourquoi les mots sont-ils si importants pour se construire?
Yeah, yes, it's such, absolutely. I mean, imagination has been sort of a pillar, a resource for me to imagine, to have ideas that I could entertain in my head. That for my actual mother, I have a very imaginative mother who had a mentally ill sister. And I often thought about what that was like for her with her ripe and vital imagination, struggling with her love for her sister, who was dealing with something much more heavy and serious. But for my mother, who then passed along wonderfully this sense of an imaginative openness to the world, there's also then the joy of it, and then also it can make things extra frightening. I have kids, I can see it in my kids too, how they are so imaginative, and how, like most kids at bedtime, things are scary, and it's hard to keep your mind from building on the scary thoughts. And I can help them to a point, but I also know it's sort of, that's part of the childhood experience. Once again, like I can't undo that for them. I can reassure as much as I can.
Vous écrivez que dans un sens, nous sommes tous enfermés. Devenir des adultes consiste à trouver les clés et les gens qui vont nous aider à nous libérer. Quelles sont les clés que vous avez trouvées?
I mean, in one way, imagination was certainly one. The idea that this way of imagining things and thinking about things can open up a way of processing the world. And in that same way, language becomes a key. Certain crucial relationships with people, therapy for me has been super helpful. So just all kinds of modes of processing, writing in that way. I think the keys for me feel like the processes that don't resolve easily, the relationships that grow and change, the work that grows and change, my relationship to the world, and all of that feels like the stuff that sustains me.
Si vous étiez un papillon l'espace d'un instant, où iriez-vous?
I love it. So in Los Angeles, we have a lot of monarch butterflies coming up from Mexico. There was one time that I went to school in San Diego to college, and there was one time they were on their migration and they had covered a eucalyptus tree, and it was coated with monarch butterflies, and they were very still. And I remember grabbing strangers to say, look at this incredible sight. So I think I'd like to go on their migration journey a little bit. I'm not sure how far north they go, but they're so beautiful.